The one with the morning after is a very strong Friends episode, but it's very difficult to watch. It's very emotional. This is the 16th episode of the third season of Friends, directed by the brilliant James Burrows. And there will be spoilers from this point on as I dissect the episode a little bit and basically talk about things that I think work really well. I will say it's not a particularly funny episode. There are, of course, funny moments, but I think it's one of the few Friends episodes that can make me cry because it's just so emotional. So I'll go through this mostly chronologically, and it starts off quite funny with Rachel telling Monica about the breakup, and Monica gets food on the ceiling, and everything seems quite chaotic, and it's unclear where things are going. Cut to Ross in bed, he's on his own, and then we realise that Chloe is in the apartment and Ross is listening to his answer phone messages, and Rachel's coming over. Things are still chaotic and crazy. We need to get Chloe out of the apartment before Rachel comes over. Ross opens the door. There is Rachel. And the way that that was framed, it just looks brilliant. It's shocking. It's really effective. And we still have some comedy in there with Chloe interacting with Ross from behind the door. And it's definitely still light-hearted enough. And then we get some more comedy with Waxine. Monica has ordered some Waxine from an infomercial she saw, and Phoebe and Monica try out the wax strips. And one of my favourite bits in the whole episode, one of my favourite funny bits, is when they're yelping in pain and Chandler and Joey come rushing to their rescue, which I thought was rather adorable. Not everything from Chandler and Joey is adorable, though, as they convince Ross to not tell Rachel about Chloe, which is a big secret to keep if you're going into a relationship. You really should be honest, even though it would be painful. And some people may argue otherwise, but I think the best thing Ross should have done was tell her straight, because think of the trail. And of course, this is the part of the episode where Ross runs frantic, trying to trace this back to whoever could potentially tell Rachel. And honestly, I think it's pretty perfect that Gunther was the one to tell Rachel, knowing, of course, that Gunther is kind of in love with Rachel. But the scene's very funny to begin with, where Ross confronts Gunther, and Gunther is very funny, and then Ross turns around and Rachel is in Central Park and she just looks devastated. And it's hard to watch from this point. The rest of the episode plays out in Monica's apartment with Ross and Rachel fighting in the main room, and the rest of them are all in the bedroom. And we have comedy from the bedroom and heartache and confusion and stress from the main room, as basically Ross begs Rachel for forgiveness, and Rachel's confused because she clearly still has feelings for Ross, but as she says, she can't stop picturing him with her, which is interesting, as I don't know if she even knows what Chloe looks like. But it's a very, very intense scene, and Ross, in his defense, pointed, well, not necessarily in his defense, but Ross did point out that Rachel bailed on the relationship the moment things got difficult. And something I mentioned in the previous episode discussion is that Rachel allowed Mark to come over to the apartment as soon as they were on a break, even though Mark was one of the reasons that caused a wedge between them. So it's interesting to note that Rachel is not innocent here. She didn't do anything quite as bad as Ross did, but I do think it's always worth noting that they were both at fault in some way, and neither one of them is 100% responsible for this breakup and for the way things went. The scene or the moment where Ross is on his knees, gripping onto Rachel, begging her to try and make things work, it breaks me. It's so difficult to watch that moment because the desperation Ross feels is so apparent, and Rachel as well. You can see that she doesn't want the relationship to end, but she can't see a way past it. And it's horrific. It's horrible, but it's so strong and so well done, and it's beautiful for that reason, and it's very impressive. but very emotional. And then, of course, we end with a bit of comedy with Joey and his new walk or his need to pee, and we end on a lighter note. But it's definitely one of the heaviest Friends episodes, maybe the heaviest Friends episode. Let me know if you think of an episode that's heavier, but off the top of my head, I'd say this is one of the most challenging to watch. Challenging for the right reasons, but challenging nonetheless. It's a great episode, a difficult episode, but certainly one that's very powerful.